Hello, everyone. Welcome to another week of the Inner RAE podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about the importance of retreating. With that, I am Katie, and I am so grateful to be here with you guys today.
And I'm Erin, and I am also pumped to talk about this topic. I actually just got back from vacation, and it would qualify as a retreat where I got to actually rest. So I'm going to take a moment and define these words for you because I feel like it's important that we're on the same page. We hear these words all the time, but I think the definitions can be really powerful. So, what does it actually mean to retreat? To withdraw to a quiet and secluded place for rest, relaxation, prayer, and meditation. And then to rest is to cease work or movement in order to relax, refresh oneself, or recover strength.
Hmm.
So, with those definitions, I'm going to kick it back over to Katie to get us started.
Oh, I hear those, and it just makes me want to take a deep breath. Like it put me into this, ah, and that sigh, I think, is ultimately one of the reasons why we are talking about the importance of retreating today. And I say that sigh because when we think about our world, this culture that we're in, everything is moving so fast. We're in overdrive. We're going, going, going. We're trying to achieve, achieve, achieve. And it almost feels impossible to take a breath, let alone give ourselves time to rest and rejuvenate and rebuild. We're seeing immune system diseases on the rise, disease in general on the rise, cancer, illness, all of these things. They're becoming more common because we're putting so much pressure on our bodies, on our emotions, on our energy, on our spirit to keep up with the pace of modern life. And retreating is a perfect way to really put on the brakes, to rest and refuel. And when you do that, the first thing that typically happens is you sigh. Your body is like, oh my God, I can release some tension. And that sigh is such a sign that you're finally putting yourself in a space where you can breathe, where your body can get into a state of deep cellular healing. And that's really what we all need. We retreat or we pause when we're forced to. Sickness shows up and we have no other choice but to rest. But we wanted to raise this as a topic today because we hope to invite you and give yourself permission to proactively seek retreat before it's something that is forced upon you. So, with all of that, I'm curious. We talk about culture. I'm curious, Erin, what are some of the ways that you are seeing this overdrive show up in sessions with clients?
Yeah, I feel like an iteration of this shows up in almost every single client I work with.
Yep.
So, some of the classic ways it shows up, burnout is probably the most obvious one, whether that be because a client is a primary caregiver, a parent taking care of a sick loved one. It could be burnout from a job, just having poor boundaries at work, working in dysfunctional workplaces. Anxiety is a very generalized thing that I see, but it's often because there's not enough space, not enough rest, not enough retreat. Depression can also be, just depending on how your nervous system responds to overwhelm or what level or phase of overwhelm you're in. Like sometimes anxiety is the early symptom and people override the anxiety. So then depression comes later. Insomnia is a big thing that I see, a lack of sense of purpose, direction, because when we are not making time to pause and rest and reflect and retreat, we don't ever get into that default mode, I think is what it's called, when the brain is able to rest and like creativity and ideas and inspiration can come through. It's why people often say they get ideas in the shower because you've gone into that default. What am I trying to say, Katie? Default mode.
Like that default mode where your body can actually go into a state of rest and rejuvenation
Yeah.
that like,
I feel like there's a technical term I'm missing, but
there
we'll
is,
add it
but
into the show notes. Yeah.
yeah.
So if you can't go into that mode, it's hard to understand if you are on track for your life purpose. So a lot of times people are feeling like they are not living out their purpose, living out their destiny, whatever that is. Those are all symptoms to me of our culture being go, 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 and people not knowing how to rest and retreat. The other thing I wanted to mention is that a couple episodes ago, we talked about trusting the peace. That is a very intellectual pursuit if you are never resting, pausing, and retreating, because peace and a calm nervous system for somebody who's been on overdrive for a long time, or maybe has survived a traumatic childhood and therefore doesn't even know what it's like to be peaceful and be rested. You have to experience it to even know what it is that you haven't had. And I was sharing with someone that so many of my vacations or trips I've taken, as someone who needs maybe more rest than the average person, often I come home from a vacation and I need like a staycation from my vacation because I am so exhausted from the act of going on a trip or going on a vacation. And when I came back from this trip, where really all I did was I went up into the mountains and spent like a ton of time in a cabin and in nature, I came home and I was like rested. And I had all of this energy, and thank God, because I've had a crazy week this week catching up from being gone. But it was the first time I really felt that true relaxation in my body through my nervous system on such a deep level.
Mm.
And I'm going to be honest, I can tell you, I've done all this work on myself. That was a level of peace I have not had in recent memory, or maybe if ever. And so how would I know how to trust the peace when I haven't even experienced it? So anyway, went off on a tangent there, but yeah, I see this in coaching. In almost every client, there is some iteration of this topic where this could be applied.
Mm. It sounds like when you're explaining what it felt like to be on this vacation, it sounds like you were completely in touch with your inner radiance, which
Mhm.
is this effortless space where you are alive, where you have access to that calm, which is where it all stems from. And you mentioned these physical manifestations of not retreating and resting. So, for everybody listening, okay, how does this show up holistically? How does this show up in relationship? When we have all of these things that we're feeling in our body that aren't good, when we're feeling burnout, when we're feeling depression, chronic pain, anxiety, it lowers our capacity for connection in our relationships, whether that is at home with your family, with your loved one, at work, with yourself, everything. And so ultimately, that's what we're here to help you do. And there are different ways to seek rest in all dimensions. And so I think it'd be really good for us to go into some of the ways that we can seek rest and create refuge within each dimension. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. It's a great idea. When I'm thinking about rest in each dimension, emotional is the first one.
Mhm.
Emotional rest can look like there are times at which we need to retreat in order to feel the emotions that are maybe more stuck, more in the subconscious. And then there are other times where honestly, I'm like, can we just keep it light? Can we just like laugh and giggle and watch a comedy? Like, I need some rest from these deep feelings. So, like anything, emotions can be cyclical where you dive deep and then you retreat.
Mhm.
And then when I think about intellectual, I'm a very intellectual person, but there are definitely phases where I literally can't take any more information. And then there are other cycles where I'm just really ready to absorb all of the information and everything in between. And even if I'm in a cycle where I'm absorbing a lot of information, I need to take breaks. So rest and retreat can be like significant. Go take a week off, go take 6 months off. But it can also just be, I need a 5-minute break between these modules of this training that I'm
Oh,
taking.
go ahead.
And physical rest, I think that's what most people think of when they think of rest. But even within that, I do intermittent fasting, which is not for everybody. If you're listening, I do think you need to know your body, but I'm giving my digestive system rest. And that is part of it, right? So that's a form of physical rest. There's, of course, sleep and all of the obvious physical rest, cycling with your workouts, like doing weight training, then taking rest. Then there's spiritual rest. There are times that we want to commune with our sense of spirituality. There are times we want to manifest. There are times we want to go to a temple or go somewhere to give thanks and worship. And then there are times where we need to let life unfold and we need to be in the third dimension and we need to be in the practical, and being in this ethereal spiritual realm is not practical. So again, cycles there. Relational rest, right? Sometimes we need to be around people, sometimes we don't. Sometimes a relationship needs a lot of attention because there's conflict. Sometimes we need breaks.
Mm.
Um, which one? Oh, financial.
Financial.
So, yeah, this is the one that's a little bit, it took me a minute to wrap my head around this. But honestly, sometimes if you run a business, you see this even more so than if you work for a company. But there are times when you got to strike while the iron is hot and you're earning that money and you're saving that money. And then there are times when there are lulls in earning. And so it might be a time to reflect and to pause rather than, hey, let's just push the river and go against what is happening organically here. There are also times where you intentionally say, I'm going to take a break from examining my finances or looking at my budget. And then there are other times when you're like, no, this is a cycle where we do need to do a lot of reflection and resetting. When you're able to use this holistic balancing tool to examine resting and retreating, I think that you really get to see how important this is and how this is actually just part of the natural world, which I think we forget when we're on Zoom and we're listening to podcasts and we're watching Netflix. It's so easy to forget, oh, wait, we're human. Guess what? Humans are animals. Animals are in nature and
Mhm.
nature cycles. With that, I'm going to maybe pass it back to you to just talk about that a little bit more because I know how deeply connected you are to nature, Katie.
Yeah. I look to nature and to animals to teach me just about everything. And when I'm hearing you share all of this, right? Like the key is being able to listen to your body, to know when it needs to rest, to understand what season, what cycle it is in. And I think when you're in overdrive, you're not listening to your body at all. You're continuing to burn and burn and burn and burn when there's no more fuel. And so it's so important, right? Like we can't be on all the time. We can't be in full bloom all the time. It is just literally not how it works. And what are the ways that we can take a step back and really start to get in tune with the ways that our body is trying to communicate to us? And I think I there are 3 examples that are coming to my mind around how we can look to animals as a way to just give us permission to lean into retreat, to lean into this pause, to lean into this rest. And it really helped me when I was trying to rewrite my whole internal narrative to give myself permission to pause and to retreat and to rest, because that is literally like the hardest thing in the world for me to do. Oh, the mental chatter that would pop up when I would just try to take a nap when I was so tired, it was insane. So if anyone out there relates to that, I'm here with you. But examples being, so when you think about a butterfly, right? Like a butterfly retreats into a cocoon for 2 to 5 weeks and it literally turns into soup. And then it reemerges with this adult structure. It grows wings, everything, and then it becomes a butterfly. Like it literally goes from caterpillar to soup to butterfly in a cocoon. It needs that rest in order to become and transform what it's meant to. Then you think about a bear, right? It hibernates to conserve energy. And there are so many different studies now and discoveries around scientists studying what it is that hibernation is doing for a bear and how actually it's leading us to breakthroughs within how to treat like osteoporosis, strokes, heart disease, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. And then I don't know if any of you guys have watched My Friend the Octopus Teacher. If you haven't, highly suggest it. There's a scene in there where the octopus gets one of its arms bitten off by a shark and it retreats underneath a rock for 4 to 6 months. And then it reemerges, and all of a sudden its arm has grown back. And so I just think that all of these examples, and there are so many more out there, are just nature's way of and spirit's way of reaching out to us to encourage us to take this step into retreat, into pause, into rest. Because I know for myself, it's simultaneously the easiest thing in the world to do and the hardest thing in the world to do. So when we can fall into these larger cycles and trust what our body needs, the more we will be aligned with our inner radiance and allow it to shine.
And I feel like there's a little bit of like a Jedi mind trick you have to do in our culture to convince yourself of the value of rest. But in my experience, most people waste a lot of time and energy when they are not rested. I know for me, I do not identify as someone, for example, who has classic ADHD.
Mm,
However, when I'm exhausted, I cannot focus. I
mm,
cannot absorb information. I'm also not someone who operates well when I'm just saturating myself. All of our systems need a chance to reset. And I think it would also be important before we start to close this episode if maybe I went through some really practical ways to start to implement rest. So if you're listening and you're like, I can't afford a vacation right now, I can't afford a retreat, there's just too much going on. I started by simply taking breaks from technology, right?
mm,
This is a very simple way to start to experience because when you actually look at the definitions, to retreat is to withdraw to a quiet and secluded place. Like you can have a quiet and secluded place within your own mind, within your own home, within
mhm,
your own city. It could be a hiking path that you go to. It could be getting a massage. It could be turning off all your technology and asking your family to leave and go to the zoo. It could be there are lots of different ways to create that. It doesn't have to be a formal retreat, although I will talk about the benefit of that as well. So there are daily things that you can do. Even I have this very simple bedtime routine that my body knows, okay, I know that when I turn on the teapot to start to make my tea and I turn all the lights low and I start to listen to certain types of music, I'm letting my body know, hey, it's time. It's time to start unwinding. It's time to start resting. It's time to start retreating. And now my nervous system knows, okay, we're shifting. We're shifting out of the go, 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 and we're shifting into the rest and the peace. These are ways to start incorporating rest and retreat just in your day, right? So, really good daily hygiene. Then there's weekly things, right? Not to get biblical, but Sunday's the day of rest in the Bible, right? Like not that it has to be Sunday for you, but choosing 1 or 2 days. I highly recommend 2 consecutive days, if not more, a week where you are intentionally retreating and resting. Yes, I know we have a million errands, and I know we have, if you have children, you might have a soccer game or a hockey tournament or an art festival or a play that you have to go to, I highly recommend that you find time every single week, ideally a whole day. But of course, if you can't do that, even an hour, 2 hours to retreat. I had a couple I worked with and they had young kids, and they would sit down every week and they would both give themselves a 2 hour window in that week where they would individually retreat from the family because that's what they needed to not lose their mind. And your kids are not going to be that age forever. So the ideal would be maybe a full day, 2 days. But if you have a complicated life, even an hour a week. Then monthly rest and reset, whatever that looks like for you. Maybe you and your loved one take a little weekend vacation somewhere once a month. Again, that might not be possible for you. Maybe you commit to start doing the weeding in the garden and that becomes your rest and retreat, although that's technically work. So if it doesn't, if it feels like work for you, that might not count. And then annual or semi-annual retreats and rest. And so Katie and I are hosting this retreat that we'll talk about later on in the episode as we close. But that's an example. Like maybe you do take a vacation and you go to a different setting and you actually remove yourself from the environment.
Mm.
So, yeah, have I missed any types of rest and retreats?
No, no, and yeah.
Absolutely. We do have to start to wrap up. I'm going to ask Katie, who in the public eye is living and broadcasting their inner radiant, authentic energy, specifically maybe around this topic of rest that you would
Yeah.
like to share, and that this person helps you embody your most inner radiant, authentic self?
Mm. So the person that is coming to mind is Richard Rudd, and I could go on and on and on about him. He's an international spiritual teacher. He's an award-winning writer and poet. He's also the creator of Gene Keys, and which is all about unlocking the higher purpose in our DNA. This relates back to our body and the importance of rest. But what I love so much about him and the ways that he has inspired me is he talks a lot about the art of contemplation, which is truly all about the power of the pause. And what I love about it is its simplicity. It's changed my life forever because it's all about pausing, pivoting, and merging and looking for small moments in our days. He gives this example of, okay, you're driving and you hit a red light, or you're driving and you hit traffic, and your natural instinct might be to fall into frustration when actually we can see that for the gift that it is, which is really nature, the universe gifting us a moment to pause, a moment to find peace, a moment to breathe. It doesn't matter where you're going, everything's going to be okay. As long as you can, in that moment, really fall into the spaciousness that the universe has given to you. And the more we can add in moments like that after you have a sip of coffee or while you're having your sip of coffee, after you've finished a sentence, the more you can add in the power of the pause through a breath, through just tuning into this field of calm and contemplation around us, the more your nervous system has time to rest, the more you're not getting overly stressed out, the more when you put your head on your pillow, like your mind is clear. It's not so overwhelmed. You sleep better. Everything starts to change and shift when we can add in this pause and really start to understand the art of contemplation. And yeah, it can just be so simple. And that's what I love about it. So I hope that this episode is giving you permission and an invitation into this calm so that hopefully nothing will feel quite so overwhelming in your days and you can invite more peace into your life. So we also hope that we'll see you at our retreat, which I think Erin's going to chat a little bit more about.
We've been teasing you guys for a little while now, and I promise we are going to be revealing all the
Mm.
details of the retreat by August 13th. That is my intention. I've said it out loud now to you guys. And there will be an early bird special. If you already get our emails or you follow us on social media, you'll see all of that. If you're listening and you don't and you're interested, please just reach out to get onto our mailing list or follow us on socials where we'll be announcing it. But the retreat, if you haven't already heard about it, is going to be November 9th through the 13th in the beautiful Monterey Peninsula, in the town where Katie actually resides, Carmel by the Sea. We have these charming cottages and this storybook landscape that is moments away from these beautiful oceanic scenes that I feel like I don't even fully understand the gorgeousness of what we are about to be retreating into. But on top of that, we also have this amazing, both restful but also invigorating schedule planned for you. You're going to get a lot of quality time with Katie and I. We have handpicked additional practitioners to be joining us. The Inner RAE curriculum that you'll be experiencing will be illuminating, awakening, and we're going to be incorporating lots of experiential and creative and nature involved activities. And you're going to get to take stuff home with you and integrate them back into your own life to create your own rest, retreat, and pause at home. When I tell you it's going to be amazing, I really mean that. Katie and I both put our heart and soul into the beginning of the planning, and we'll continue to do that until the end. Be on the lookout for more details. And I think that's it for this week. You have anything else you want to add, Miss Katie?
Nope, other than take a breath today, folks.
All right. Hope you guys have a good week, and we'll see you next week.
All right, bye-bye.